My name is Richard Kirk, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of my life story. I was born and raised in the Methodist Church in a small town in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia in the baby boomer years of the 40s and 50s. It was truly a wonderful, almost magical childhood growing up in that community. My sister and I enjoyed many friends in the neighborhood, in the schools, and in the church. I did very well in school, and I had a good feeling about myself, about my life, and about my future. But for me, this magical childhood came to a crashing halt with the onset of puberty, when I recognized that just when all my friends started talking about members of the opposite sex, I realized that I was sexually attracted not to girls, but to boys. Worse still, I'd been taught very well what this meant. It meant that I was not the person who everybody thought I was. I was instead a person that nobody wanted me to be. In fact, I knew that if it became known who I was, my family would reject or even disown me, my community would despise and revile me, and my church would condemn me. So here I was, a 13-year-old scared kid, trapped in a horrible situation, and everything I knew and loved, my community, my church, my friends, and my family, were all aligned against me. And if that weren't bad enough, there was absolutely no place on earth that I could turn to for help and support. In those days, there were no helplines, there was no internet, there was no visible gay life or publications of any kind. So I did turn to the only place where I thought I might get help, even though it wasn't here on earth. I prayed to God to just allow me to be attracted to a girl, and I promised I would do the right thing. I waited and I prayed, but it didn't happen. I sometimes wondered if that meant that God hated me, just like I knew everybody on earth would if they found out who I really was. Words can't express how extremely, indescribably worthless I felt, or how isolated I was then. The only thing I knew how to do was to live outwardly as a person who I was not, and somehow survive until I could get out of that town and out of that church. I had no idea where I might go, where it might somehow be better. But that had to be a problem for another time. For now, my energies were expended in keeping my nose to the grindstone, living a lie, keeping up appearances, and above all, not getting discovered. It was just so hard. My once top grades fell steadily throughout high school to below passing, something which my parents and teachers just couldn't understand. But I scored so well on my college boards that I got into Virginia Tech anyhow. And when I went there at age 17, I knew that for me, "you can't go home again" wasn't just a slogan. I stopped attending church. I graduated from Virginia Tech in 1968, the year of no deferments from the Vietnam War. So ironically, I became something that supposedly didn't exist in 1968. A gay man in the military with a top-secret crypto security clearance. Of course, by lying about my sexuality, and yes, they asked, but I was really getting beyond sick of not telling. In 1972, I came to Philadelphia to go to grad school at Penn, and in 1974, I met the love of my life, my partner, John Schnepp. After receiving my doctorate in 1979, we decided to make our life in John's beloved hometown of Philly. So I applied to the federal government for a position in the civil service. This time, as an openly gay man, I was denied my security clearance. But a network of lawyers challenged the case for me and overturned the ban on gays in non-critical federal positions and got me my career in the federal government. I retired from the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2007. John and I lived together in the University City section of Philadelphia and worked very hard with our neighbors there in making that community into perhaps the best, most diverse, and vibrant place to live and raise families in the whole city. John and I were life partners for 35 years, from my grad school into my retirement, until his brain tumor did us part in 2009. To this day, I can't believe I was so lucky to have such a wonderful, productive, and fulfilling life with John, and I still miss him terribly. It was the onset of John's brain tumor in 1990 that got us back into the church. Since the top brain cancer specialists were divided about John's critical treatments, we wound up having to make all the important decisions ourselves and realized there was only one place to turn for help. The criticality of John's brain tumor trumped the church's adversarial position on homosexuality. We attended masses at the neighborhood's Roman Catholic Church where John had been baptized 40 years before. A few years after that, I got involved in the revitalizations at Calvary United Methodist Church in the neighborhood and became a member there. John remained in the Catholic Church where he was comfortable worshiping, but helped enormously with the revitalizations at Calvary. And at Calvary, as opposed to at the Catholic churches, we were openly welcomed, accepted, and even celebrated the whole congregation because Calvary was a reconciling congregation. And so I come before you today as a United Methodist, working for the day that no kid will ever have to go through what I had to go through growing up again. Innocent kids still do grow up that way, with that horrible stigma today, a half-century after my own childhood. Even after all the progress the nation has made as a whole, and to this day, we still witness gay teen suicides virtually without end. To me, it's a wonder that I wasn't one of those statistics, because I was made to feel so worthless as a teenager. What we in America still put our own LGBT kids through is a horrible sin, and we're all responsible for the pain and suffering that it causes. As United Methodists, we really need to commit to love those kids as we love ourselves, as Jesus commands us to do, and also to commit not to pass judgment on them or to cast stones at them, as Jesus has commanded us not to do. For our part, as United Methodists, we need to start showing that love by removing the language about homosexuality from the United Methodist discipline. There is no other place that the United Methodist Church can start. I'm begging you to consider that. It really does matter. Thank you for your time.